Hi students, welcome to the Essay 1 Revision Guide. This week we will be revising and submitting our final drafts of Essay 1 on Connect. So this guide is going to give you some guidance. You guys seen the meme with the guy who's always like, change my mind, and everybody makes these into different memes. I put my face on here because, well, I'm a dork. But every student can significantly improve a first draft. I feel very strongly about this. Writing is a process. If you take one thing away from my class, it's that writing is a process. Think about what Anne Lamott wrote about in her essay, Shitty First Drafts, about how we write poorly, but we can always improve. That's just the nature of writing. So the need to know is that revising is not the same as editing. These are a few things I want to stress to you. Editing has to do with sentence level issues, style, mechanics, grammar. Revising is bigger, and we'll talk about that in more detail in this presentation. But revising, it's bigger, so it's global. It takes more effort and time and thought to really revise an essay. It's a process. Yes, it can be frustrating because it takes time. And yes, you may question, like, I don't know where to start. How do I fix what do I need to fix? How do I fix this? We've gone through this process with the peer review, with the self-eval to help you identify some of those issues. So every student can improve a draft. And so there's everybody, all of us can do this. Revision is something everybody can participate in. Yes, it's up to you as the writer to know what to revise and how to revise. So it's all within your power and within your reach. So I hope this guide will help you with the revision process. So the approach to revising your draft, there's a few things you can think about. On the bigger level, what has writing about the experience revealed to you? Has the insight become any clearer? Think about this as you read feedback from your peers. Did your peers understand the meaning of your story? Could they connect to it? For focus, what can we revise in terms of details, that development for those close-up moments? Is there anything in that area where you can add relevant details? The shape of a story. This has to do with the structure. It has to do with the pacing of a narrative. Is the scope manageable? I've talked about scope before in my previous presentations. Do you get into the action quickly? For example, are the statements of your thoughts and emotions short and simple, and you don't focus too much on just inside your head? You're actually developing the plot and engaging your readers. So these are a few things you can think about when revising your draft. So how do we approach revision? We look at the feedback from our peers. Remember, your peer workshop is for your test audience, and you should have, by this point, or be in the process of getting that feedback from your peers. And in the third stage of that peer review workshop, reflecting on that feedback. Sometimes your fellow peers do not participate. Even though they submitted a paper, you might not get feedback. It's possible. I know that's frustrating, but don't be discouraged, because the peer reviews, the actual doing the peer reviews for other students, I think is more beneficial than even getting the feedback. And consider your self-eval assignment. That's another reason I have you guys do that, because that assignment that you did where you uploaded your paper on the wheel and answered questions, that should definitely help bring into focus some of those strengths and weaknesses. The art of questioning, if you recall that, here's some questions you should ask. What are your best images? Do the words and phrases present concrete sensory details? What conflict does the narrator face? Do you encounter the conflict early? Does it build and get to a point of greatest tension? Is there some kind of resolution? What parts of the essay do you contribute to the insight or the conflict, or do not contribute to the insight or conflict? Sometimes you have to cut those, or what I call kill your darlings, things that you really got attached to in your story but you need to get rid of. Can you make any suggestions for, like, the organization? Are there transitions so the readers always know where they are in time and place? Are there any places in the story where the narrator spends too much time reflecting? You don't want a whole essay that just focuses on that. Can you replace details that convey emotion? So there's a lot of things to think about. Have you provided all the necessary background information that readers need? Sometimes we think we have, and we go back and read it again and realize, oh, I need to clarify a few things, right, to answer all of my readers' questions. So for some of these narrative techniques or text moves, we're going to look at how we can incorporate some of that, because that's always my biggest criticism on everybody's paper. I guarantee you I will write this over and over again. Need more description, or need more text moves, need more, technique. You need to engage your readers. So for one of the things you can do that has so much impact is to add a little bit of concrete sensory detail. These are specific words that appeal to our senses. You don't have to just do this the whole essay and describe every single thing you see, but in those key moments, those close-ups, that's what we're talking about. The example I give here is from the essay, My 8-Cal Bracelet. So let's look at the right side without concrete detail. If this passage here was written like this: my dad was a man that smiled all the time. He was also very strong. I was a lot like him. It just doesn't stick. It doesn't stick in my mind. I will never remember that. With the detail, Dad was a man who always had a ready smile on his face. For as long as I have known him, he has had crow's feet at the corner of his eyes from smiling. His hands always seemed big and strong to me as he got older. I began to see where I got my physical attributes. Wow. Detail. The crow's feet at the corner of the eyes. The hands that seemed big and strong, especially as he got older. That's memorable. That's what we're talking about with concrete sensory detail. Where can you add some of that? Another thing to consider is using concrete detail versus vague language. And what I want you to note here is just how just a couple words can add so much. Here's some examples. A vague sentence might say, the roof, or a phrase might say, the roof of the Superdome. Well, compare that to this, the rusted, ruined roof of the Superdome. Cardboard boxes, okay, I kind of know what cardboard boxes means, right? I have an image of it. But when you say the rain-soaked cardboard boxes, whoa, okay, that gives me a whole completely different image, a concrete image. Unable to drive in the streets, or unable to drive far in the debris-chocked streets. Okay. The dust starts rising up, or fine yellow dust starts rising up. So you can see the difference between vague and concrete language and how much impact that can have in your writing. Figurative language is another thing you can think about in your revisions. Sometimes we can use metaphors, which is comparing two things. Here's an example. I would sit on top in the lovely dark chill, munching away a chipmunk in paradise. Right? So this writer's comparing herself to a chipmunk in paradise. You can also use similes, which are the same thing as metaphors, but using like, than, or as. People were stacked like goods in a warehouse. You could just say it was crowded. Okay, boring. That doesn't stick in my mind. But when you say people were stacked like goods in a warehouse, you're comparing two things that really bring that image alive. It's like painting a word picture. Dialogue is another thing, and we've seen examples of dialogue, I think, in both of the sample essays we looked at, but mostly in the essay Driving Away. It adds energy and interest to a narrative. Just remember to use dialogue tags. You don't have to get fancy. You can just say he said, she said. That's fine. And you want to avoid needless dialogue. You don't want to just have dialogue that doesn't move the story forward or doesn't provide readers any information. So let's look at the example from Driving Away. Hey, Nick, what's up? Dude, I had a freaking heart attack yesterday. A heart attack? Wait, what? I know, right? Are you okay? Tommy just picked me up from the hospital from a fifth. Should you be drinking? I whispered, self-conscious in front of the dolls. Probably not, he said. So, I mean, that's just a short little passage with a back and forth dialogue. And wow, what you feel like you're in the moment. You feel like you're witnessing the scene here, right? And it's just very simple. And every time, what you have to remember about dialogue is every time the speaker switches, you make a new line, you break a new line. Okay, it's kind of like a play, right? Except you don't have the tags for every single line. So if you aren't sure how to format dialogue, there's a million resources online that can help you with that. You can also just look at an example, like from the essay Driving Away. So there are some other things to think about for improving your essays. And we are going to look at some of those smaller things. Transitions get us from one place to the next. And you really have to have that in a personal narrative. You have to know where you are, and you have to know when you are in the story. If your readers get lost and don't know where they are in time and place, then things are going to fall apart a little bit. So I'm just giving you here some reminders about the types of transitions you might be using to let us know where you are and when you are in the story. So if you want, you can look at this or come back to it or take a screenshot and use it to help you revise for transitions. Check sentence level issues. So now we're getting smaller to the sentence level. One of the things that pronouns are an issue that I see with this essay. You shouldn't be using the pronoun you. So do yourself a favor, do a little check. Use your word search in Word to see how many times you used the word you. Shouldn't be in there unless it's part of like the dialogue. I is okay for the essay, but not you. Another common issue I see in personal narratives is verb tense shifts. You got to check your verb tenses. If you're writing a story about a past experience, then you should be writing in the past tense and not shifting into the present or going back. Yeah, you don't want to go back and forth. So I gave you a couple examples of verb tense shifts so you can see what I'm talking about. You're going to have to check because that is a problem. It's a grammar issue, but it can confuse your narrative. Clarity and conciseness is important, and this is something I'm going to ask you to practice this week to give you in one of our Connect assignments to help you know how to edit sentences for wordiness. You'll be surprised by how much clutter you have in your sentences that you just don't need. Don't think about word counts. Don't think about page counts. I'd rather you fall just a little bit short than have really wordy, clunky sentences. So learn how to revise for clarity and conciseness and to edit for wordiness. Some of the tools that you can use to help you with your revising and editing is the MS Word grammar check. You guys have probably used that. I always leave mine on that all the time. You can also use Connect's grammar checker. That's new. They just put that in this year. I'm not that familiar with it, but I've been playing around. And it seems pretty comprehensive. Like there's a lot of stuff it finds, and there's a lot of resources it helps you with if you need help understanding issues. So open that little section up on the right-hand side of your screen where you submit your paper. You'll see the grammar check. And give it a chance because there's a lot there. And I am going to count off if I see a lot of grammar issues. Okay. You can also use Grammarly.com. I download it and use the free version, but there's a paid version too. So the last few tips I want to give you for how to approach a revision is, again, come back to your peer review feedback. Remember, they are your test audience. Review chapter 4 on the personal narrative if you need to review some of that for help. And go back to the narrative essays. There's nothing like an example. I always use examples. I always refer to examples and read those again. Read passages, read parts of them. You don't even have to read the whole thing again, but go back to those places that are memorable to you and see how the writer made that memorable. If you weren't able to participate in the peer review process for whatever reason, you can still ask for some help from a family member or a friend to be a test audience. Keep that in mind. Revise in cycles. Start globally. Fix the bigger things, the development, the organization, the details, the description, the text moves, all that stuff. Then go into the sentence level revisions, which is more like the editing that we talked about. Oh, speaking of editing, I see a little typo. Read your essay out loud to yourself or to a friend. You will be amazed by how many issues you find if you read your paper out loud. I always, in my face-to-face classes, I always have students do this, and they're always surprised by what they find when they read it out loud. Because I think what happens is our ears hear what our eyes just kind of, or our brain tricks us into missing. And if you still have questions, let me know. I can always give you a little bit of guidance if you get stuck. And of course, again, use the grammar check tool and Connect. It's going to be, I think, pretty helpful. Don't submit your final draft until you have revised. Please make sure that you revise that draft and have given yourself a couple days with all your feedback to sit and think and revise before you submit the essay. Okay, I hope this helps you. If you need anything, let me know.